Guys, good to see you all. Let me just start with this, James. There was so much consternation about Trump's nominees getting through. I mean, I think Kash Patel will now be fine. Maybe the labor secretary nominee, because of Republican concerns and her affiliation with unions in the past or union support. But it seems like we've crossed that threshold. We're now in the clear. Fair?
Yes, we are much better off this go around than we were the first Trump term. That being said, of the 800 or so positions that are monitored by the Washington Post, about 65% of them still have yet to have a nominee named. So we have a lot ahead of us, but we're doing much better than we did the first go around.
But don't you think, I think one of the things that's untold, I know everyone likes to focus on the number of nominees and people in this. I think the Trump team, at least from what I can tell, has done a better job of not just numbers, but quality of people, of what they call the Schedule Cs, the staff that doesn't require Senate nominees going in and starting to execute on the Trump agenda.
Yes. Well, I think there's a realization this go around of the importance of getting people put into place sooner rather than later. And also to that end, over the American First Policy Institute, we are doing training sessions for the incoming appointees. As we say, we want appointees, not disappointees. So
that's the new phrase. Grace, I have been fascinated by the movement. I was out at this Maha reception that was supposed to be for Bobby's confirmation, obviously delayed because of the weather and some whatever. So we'll know I don't know that we'll have it tonight or something, but I'm just continue to be fascinated by the number of women in particular who are drawn to Tulsi Gabbard and to RFK that might not have been part of a normal conservative movement in the past.
Yeah, the Maha moms especially are fascinating. And I'm going to be real with you. I'm going to be vulnerable here, Sean, and I might come under fire, but for a very long time, when people would tell me like, oh, that's poison or what you're putting in your body, or, because I'm a fan of the occasional like McDonald's or Coke, I would roll my eyes. I would be like, oh my God, like, please, there's something in everything. But RFK, and he hit on this in his confirmation hearing, he did a very good job of it, laying out just how drastic this is when you compare it to when JFK was president, looking at the chronic diseases, looking at all of this illness. And then you have all these young mothers, and I'm friends with a lot of them, who, when you have kids, it changes things. You start looking at what am I putting in my child's body? Like, what are they consuming every day? And you start to read these packages and read these labels. And so it's a really beautiful thing that these moms felt so passionately about it. And I think it's also an amazing thing that Trump, even though RFK Jr. may have been a tougher pick, he could have picked someone easier. He could have picked someone who would just slide on through. But this is what they voted for. A lot of people took a chance on Trump because they wanted this radical change in our healthcare system, and they wanted to make America healthy again. So I think it was a great move by Trump to have that loyalty to RFK Jr.
Caroline, the thing, touching on this overall theme, I guess, as a conservative for 30 years, I feel like it's always been an excuse. Oh, we got an office and this is why we can't do this. We can't do that. And we're going to talk about DOGE in a second and all that. But these guys are picking the fights. I mentioned you guys at the Independent Women's Forum were leading in this men and women's sports, and Trump took it on right away. And now I watch Pam Bondi, within the first few days, go after New York. She literally, and let's just give you context. She held this press conference yesterday, and she comes right out of the gate and goes hardcore after New York. Take a look.
We're here today because we have filed charges against the state of New York. We have filed charges against Kathy Hochul. We have filed charges against Letitia James and Mark Schroeder, who is with DMV. This is a new DOJ, and we are taking steps to protect Americans, American citizens, and angel moms, like the mom standing right behind me, who you're going to hear from in a moment. New York has chosen to prioritize illegal aliens over American citizens. It stops today.
So, Caroline, the thing that, she mentions the DMV. Why? Because New York gives illegals licenses. And so her point is, you guys say that you're refusing to work with the federal government. You can't. These are public not documents, but they're public records. These, if you're going to issue a license, and we get to, you don't have to help us go find people who are here illegally, but we get to have access to them. And this is just such a mentality shift, right? The idea is we're not just going to punt and say, oh, well, you can't deal with immigration and we're in theirs and we're going to have to figure out how to give them citizenship. They're like, we know where they are and we're going to find them and we're going to deport them.
This administration, Sean, is so competitive and cutting edge with the way it's innovating and creating new ways of combating progressivism. And this is a different style of conservatism that the old school traditionalists are used to. It's aggressive. It's comfortable using the halls of power and government basically as an instrument to take back a lot of our institutions. Culturally, Marxism has swept the nation, and I think conservatism as a philosophy, we accept that we have a long way to go and a lot of ground to recover. But using government, using the Attorney General's office, for instance, to go after these rogue blue states that are subverting federal law. I know that they're trying to challenge the sanctuary city policies in New York. And I will note that New York went the most red it had ever gone in 35 years this past election. So I'm pretty sure that Kathy Hochul needs to slow her roll before she's resisting the federal government this time. I think in our lifetime, we could see New York, New Jersey turn red for sure. But it is, all I can say is it's very innovative, the way that this administration is working. And DOGE in and of itself is a groundbreaking, unprecedented concept. The idea that you would audit federal excess and reckless expenditures and bring it into the public eye. And now it's part of our discourse, our national discourse, where previously it was all in the dark.
So James, the thing that to me is interesting, I mean, Caroline just said it, like the DOGE effort to me so far is not Republican or Democrat or conservative or Republican or liberal. It's common sense, right? And so when there's a tweet that Elon sent out, or an X, whatever he's calling it now, that I thought was really telling, and it didn't get picked up. So I want to just kind of read this for a second, because it says, to be clear, what the DOGE team and U.S. Treasury have jointly agreed makes sense is the following. Require that all outgoing government payments have a payment categorization code, which is necessary in order to pass a financial audit. This is frequently left blank, making audits almost impossible. All payments must also include the rationale for the payment in the comment field, which is currently left blank. Importantly, some are not yet applying any judgment to this rationale, but simply requiring that some attempt be made to explain the payment more than nothing. The do not pay list of entities known to be fraudulent, or people who are dead or are probable fronts for terrorist organizations, or do not match congressional appropriations, must actually be implemented and not ignored. That's not a conservative thing, James. That's literally like what household budgets do, businesses do, normal people do, people with a brain, third graders. Like, this is not rocket scientists. And people are wigging out like, he's getting access to the Treasury Department. And I'm like, I actually think you should be outraged that no one's accessed the Treasury Department and we've been able to operate like this.
In a matter of days, they uncovered $100 billion in money going out the door to unnamed sources, 50 billion of which they admit is easily fraud, and maybe more.
But how do we talk? I mean, if somebody went to you right now and said, "Hey, I just looked, Grace, I looked at your bank account, and there's a bunch going to like subscriptions that you don't use. Somebody hacked into your account." Like, you would be saying, "Thank you. Hey, I appreciate that." There's advertisements for companies that get rid of duplicative subscription services that people have. And yet here we are, like, not we, the Dems freaking out in the media going, "I can't believe we're allowing this to happen." Like, how did you, the opposite should be the case. How did you not want to cover this? How did you allow this to happen? Why isn't someone being fired for not doing their job in the first place?
Yeah, imagine if someone came to you and was like, "Hey, Sean, you've been supplying $5,000 worth of condoms to the town next door to you." You would be pretty outraged. And you're right, it's not a Republican or Democrat, but I think a big problem here, and Rahm Emanuel actually was quoted in Politico as saying this. He was talking about how, I'm not crazy about it. I'm not going to quote it exactly. I'm not crazy about the USAID thing, but you can't die on every hill.
Right.
And this isn't the hill to die on. And I think that when you look at this Democrat Party, that's what Trump has managed to break. He's managed to destroy their ability to have perspective and understand, okay, this hill is something that I think would resonate with people. This hill is not. Every hill that they see that involves Donald Trump, they have to climb up it and die on it with a bullhorn and a cane in front of the Treasury Department. And it's like, they're just making asses of themselves. And Senator Kennedy said it really well, too. He said, in DC, in this bubble, and I don't live in DC, I never have, but they think they're winning when they talk to each other. Outside of that, American taxpayers are not seeing it that way. And it's that disconnect that made them lose in November. And it doesn't seem like there's any desire for self-reflection or to kind of course correct.
I'm going to get to their response in a second, because I think it's even worse than that. But Caroline, when for a while, remember back when those storms hit North Carolina and Georgia, and there was concerns about whether FEMA was doing their job, and people in the media called anyone on the right a liar for suggesting that FEMA was misappropriating funds. And now we find out, oh yeah, it was like what, $50-something million being spent on luxury hotels to house illegals in New York City, and they're actually getting fired for that. But there's no shame. No one from the media is being held accountable for the fact that they said that none of this was true, and yet they were the ones who were wrong.
I fully believe that the outrage is only among the elite Washington swamp creatures, because they enrich themselves at the end of the day off of a lot of this government bloat. The majority of Americans are actually quite pleased with what Trump, by extension Elon Musk, are doing to root out corruption and abuse, because they fund the government. The government has no money without our dollars. And the commentariat and progressive press forget that. And like Grace was saying, they continue to dig this hole of being out of touch. And, Reuters did a survey of 15 Trump executive orders. Guess which one was the most popular? Downsizing the federal government. So there is, once again, a mandate from the people to do this. And I think it's really rich. Once again, the Democratic media class, they'll say things like, Elon Musk is unelected, but so are the bureaucrats that are sitting in the deep state. And then they'll say, well, each of these agencies that you're going to war against that do nothing, or at best with USAID, it's superficial do-goodery that is a complete waste. They'll say, well, those agencies were created by Congress. How dare you? Now suddenly they care about separation of powers and checks and balances. My question to them is, I'm sorry, in what statute are transgender operas in Bolivia listed? Where in the statute is that? It's not. Executives have a lot of deference when it comes to how these things are spent. So the line items we did not consent to. We did not consent to trans comic books in Peru, so on and so forth.
They hide it. James, the funny thing is, we've started to talk about the response, right? The funny thing is, as like someone who relishes the fight, right? I'm like, this is pathetic, their response. And the first thing I've started to notice is that there's a word, and I'm going to bleep it for our audience, but I'm going to tell you that it starts with a D and it ends in a CK. So you'll see what I'm talking about. But this is what they now, it's like an eighth grade, or actually probably like a fourth grader. This is Congressman Bob Garcia on CNN. And this is their response to Elon Musk. Take a listen.
I want to hear why, but do you think that calling Elon Musk a dick is effective messaging for confronting what is a potentially irreversible transformation of the U.S. government?
Well, he is a dick, and I think that he's also harming the American public in an enormous way.
Okay, so James, I mean, seriously, like, if this is like, for all the talk about, well, Donald Trump and the like, this is your response. This is what you on the left are saying. Like, you're not coming at him and saying, oh, he's hard, this program is being cut and it hurt. Like, that's what you got.
They say this because they have the mindset that this is just monopoly money. And when I say monopoly money, I mean monopoly money. The former chairman of the House Budget Committee, Yarmouth, was caught on tape literally saying we can do what we want, we can spend what you want, it doesn't matter, it's just monopoly money. And that sort of mindset is what allows us to spend over $6 trillion a year and spend $70,000 on an Irish musical about DEI.
Yeah, well, that's, yeah, I got to be honest, as someone of Irish descent, a DEI musical would definitely start to persuade people to support the United States, because that's what really works. I think that there's something to that. But Grace, it wasn't just the one thing. Apparently CNN is like fixated on this word, and it's not just their Democratic guests, but apparently their hosts are in on it too. So as you know, up there in New England, Governor Chris Sununu has not been the biggest Trump supporter, right? But he's on a panel, and let's see how they handle Chris Sununu just actually doing analysis.
The $59 million spent on luxury hotels, it's actually not the
talking about the FEMA money that was abused for migrants. That was FEMA money for migrants. That's okay now?
No, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's okay. Don't put words in my mouth.
So would you stop that? Would you stop that process?
Don't be the portrayal. What I'm saying is the portrayal.
It's crazy.
Say what you want. Chris Sununu is a multi-term governor who is not exactly on the MAGA team, right? You can say what you will, but like, he has endorsed Nikki Haley, right? And he's speaking truth to power. Like this, you can't defend this stuff. And then that's Anderson Cooper's comeback, using the same DI word.
Yeah, and it's crazy, Sean, because like you, I consume a lot of this stuff. I would love to say against my will, but I do search it out on Twitter.
There's an addiction, isn't there? There's an addiction.
Yeah, and there are a lot of moments that get very tense when you have a panel of, it's usually one conservative versus like 5 Democrats. And I've seen a lot of explosive conversations where people get very vicious or say something. This was not it. I mean, he was very calm. He's a very milquetoast guy. Like you said, he's not a Trump supporter. He's pointing out something obvious. For it to elicit that kind of juvenile, angry reaction from Anderson Cooper, it shows again that all of these people, these serious people, as Jonathan Karl once called them, are completely broken. And you know what I love about this? Because Caroline had mentioned the $59 million in New York City, and you've mentioned it. What they're trying to do now, and it's all about semantics. Like, it's never about the actual outrage. It's never about, $59 million that should be sent to people in North Carolina or people in LA is being sent to cover illegal alien housing. What they're trying to do now, and I saw this in the AP, which makes sense for why they got booted from the White House, one reason of a million. They're trying to say, well, it's not luxury hotels. The rate that they're getting is actually $200. Luxury is considered $400. And I'm like, I don't care.
They only get the basic
I don't care if it's a hotel, if it's a motel.
You're not getting the hot
stone.
You're not getting the hot stone during the massage. It's just standard Swedish massage, no hot stone.
The Roosevelt Hotel's down the road from me, and I'm sorry, like, it's a public nuisance, and it's disrespectful to all the high tax-paying New York residents who have to live in this neighborhood and watch the Roosevelt Hotel become a harbor for not just illegal aliens, but criminal illegal aliens like
Caroline, I have news for you. Your hometown paper there, the New York Times, let me read you the headline, because this is going to come as a surprise to you in New York. This is the headline. At Oval Office, Musk makes broad claims of federal fraud without proof. So I mean, unfortunately, it's we need to prove that there's some federal fraud, because the New York Times, the Gray Lady, the institution that we all rely on for telling us what's really happening, says that we need some proof. So I was thinking maybe Caroline Levitt could explain this for us, because she put out this great tweet saying, well, let's take a look and see if we can play that.
These are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government.
What? I mean, to me, that's gaslighting the American people. When the New York Times says without proof, that's proof.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, they're not going to take our word for it because the last thing they want to do is give the American people any accountability over the federal bureaucracy. Because, like I said, this is their lifeblood, and they're kind of in the business of keeping it big and bloated and expanding it. But I do think that maybe more detailed receipts could be shown to them. But even then, they won't be satisfied. Because then they're going to say, well. I mean, we've seen this line of logic from Democrats like for years. They'll say it's not happening, and then they'll say, okay, fine, it is happening, but it's good that it's happening, So forget it. Like, don't bother. Don't waste your breath. Like, just get it done. We are in control. Patriots are in control. Like, gut these agencies and do not apologize for it. This is popular.
Grace, you brought it up, so I'll go back to it. The Associated Press, everyone understands, was blocked from what they call an Oval Office pool, right? Okay, so just so everyone understands the terms here, this is where yours truly can come in handy. There's thousands of people with press passes to cover the White House. The press, because obviously not all of them can fit in the Oval Office, have what they call a pool. So every day, there's a radio pooler, a TV pooler, a wire pooler, a print pooler, a photographer pooler. Their job is to go to events with the President of the United States and to fly on Air Force One with him, where there's 12 of them that represent various factions of the press. They take a picture, they take video, they take sound, they write down what happened, and then give it to all of the other journalists in the pool, right? Because they all can't be there. The AP was representing the pool the other day, and they have refused to call the Gulf of America after the president, by executive order, changed it. Google fell online, everyone else, because he has the authority to do this. And the White House said, okay, if you're going to not use the language, then we don't want you being the pool person that gets to disseminate what happens. Grace Curley, you brought it up. Fair or unfair?
Fair. I wish they had gotten rid of the AP at the press briefings years ago. I mean, this is so fair. And I don't remember any outrage when, for example, the Biden administration was blocking the New York Post after the Hunter Biden indictment from events. I don't remember anyone, Brian Stelter, melting down about that. No, and it's not even about the language. Like Caroline Leavitt, she's doing such a great job as press secretary. She was asked this by CNN because they all come to each other's defense really quickly. They all want to be like, oh, I'm the warrior fighting for AP. So Caitlin Collins is asking about it.
Well,
and
let's play it. Let's play it. Let's just, you bring it up.
Yeah.
I want everyone to see her response. Let's go.
Which White House official made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the Oval Office and the diplomatic reception room last night?
Well, first of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the White House press secretary. And nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus, many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the president questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office, and you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing room today.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what Caroline was saying just a little while ago about this different tactic from the Trump administration the second time around. It's a lot more aggressive, and it's a lot more, I think, a lot more efficient to be like, hey, you want to play ball? Like, these are your rules. You guys set this up. You had a lack of transparency with the Biden administration. You treated the press like crap. And hey, maybe we'll do the same thing to you. I love it. I want to see more of it. I want to see way more.
So just to be clear, they can sit in the press briefing room. They can ask their questions there. They get their passes. But Caroline's making the case, but you don't get to come into the Oval Office because you want to. If you're going to be jerks about how you cover stuff, we get to decide who comes in the Oval. James Carter, what say you?
I agree. Totally agree. And also the point about language mattering. Language is so key because it shapes the entire debate. So if they use language that skews that debate, I think the administration has every right to do what they did.
Caroline, what would you guys say if this was the case of the National Review where you work? Like that they said, well, we don't like that you guys cover stuff in conservative, so we're not letting you into the Oval Office, right? You can come cover the White House. Frankly, the funny thing is they did cut the hard passes of 400 journalists without a peep. So to Grace's point, I feel like it's funny how no one said a peep for 4 years in Biden. Now suddenly they all care about this. But the AP puts out a style book, and all these other outlets around the country follow that style book. And when they tell everyone that we had a pronoun problem and that you had to say capitalize black when you said Black Lives, because that was their new decision, everyone had to follow it, right? That's the way it works. So when they don't use language that the White House used, is it fair to fight back?
I mean, it's just pretend outcry from these outlets, which are leftist, by the way, but they're masquerading as neutral. And NPR is obviously the most notorious because there is partially some taxpayer funding of that. But AP is still claiming to be in the middle, like very much so. I think it's like technically a wire service too. And it's just a joke at this point. Like the jig is up. And I just think it's hilarious because, to your point, there is a double standard. And I think when Democrats are in power, they wield it very strongly, and they will kick out their political opponents to advantage themselves. And now that the shoe is on the other foot and we get the chance to do that, they're pretending as though this is unprecedented. Oh my gosh, we just never believed that this would be possible. It's like, yeah, no, this is how it works. Caroline Leavitt's right. I believe that the president has the prerogative to basically exclude certain press outlets if he wants, and to kind of fashion their preference in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. It's like these guys think they're entitled to go wherever they want, whenever they want. I don't share that. And by the way, we've got a new phrase that was very much used during my my tenure at the White House and is now coming back. Instead of making you guess, I want to show you this. Our friends at Newsbusters put a great video together, but I want to show you how we've now picked back up on a phrase that was really prominent during the first term and is being revived by the media now. Take a look.
We might be on the path to a constitutional crisis.
We will ask two experts about whether or not this is a constitutional crisis.
We've never faced quite the constitutional crisis that we do right now.
They are fomenting a constitutional crisis.
Yes. Are we staring down the barrel of a constitutional crisis?
This is an existential constitutional crisis.
A constitutional crisis, possibly.
The constitutional crisis alarm bells are ringing. But is anybody listening?
We're now like one subway stop from a real constitutional crisis.
All right. I will just say this. It goes on. I'm going to get to the end because it doesn't stop, and it goes into this. But Grace, Caroline to the rescue again. She goes out to the podium and takes this issue head on. Take a look at what she had to say in response to this use of constitutional crisis.
Now, before I take questions, I would like to address an extremely dishonest narrative that we've seen emerging over the past few days. Many outlets in this room have been fear-mongering the American people into believing there is a constitutional crisis taking place here at the White House. I've been hearing those words a lot lately. But in fact, the real constitutional crisis is taking place within our judicial branch, where district court judges in liberal districts across the country are abusing their power to unilaterally block President Trump's basic executive authority. We believe these judges are acting as judicial activists rather than honest arbiters of the law.
Well, there you go, Grace. I mean, this is like, again, we're just picking up and using the same old talking points from the media because they don't know how to deal with Donald Trump.
Yeah, and when I heard constitutional crisis yesterday, I was looking over like my notes and trying to kind of reflect on all the other times because to your point into that montage, I knew that this was a trend in the first administration. But you know how I know there wasn't a constitutional crisis, Sean? For the life of me, I couldn't remember what they were, each individual case, what they were so upset about. They just love using that terminology. And, Caroline had mentioned earlier that she was like, where's the statute for the money going to Bolivia for this or that, or the DEI? Where in the Constitution did the founding fathers lay out that I'm supposed to send my money to Mozambique for $15 million worth of condoms? Were they were they thinking
Article
of this?
2, Section 1. Article 2, Section 1, Subset 3. That's right there.
It's so ridiculous. It's not working. People don't buy it. And again, it almost becomes like Charlie Brown, with the teachers when they start talking, wah, 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 wah,
right.
wah, wah. And they take themselves so seriously. It's eye rolling.
James, the thing is like, to her point, first of all, the elected head of the executive has a right to oversee the executive. And that is actually a constitutional issue when the bureaucracy is telling the president, no, you can't look at our books. But the funny part about a constitutional crisis, if you want to talk about one, I want to show you what our good friend, the Congresswoman from Minnesota, Ayanna Pressley, had to say about free speech, which might actually, in fact, be in the Constitution. Take a look.
Look, let me tell you something. I'll take a bit of umbrage here. I'll speak on behalf of my colleagues. I think I can say we are all willing to work with anyone who's serious about doing the work of censoring the American people and advancing progress. But they are not serious.
So James, that's actually in the Constitution, the right to free speech. And this is them saying, I speak on behalf of my colleagues when I say I want to work with all of you who want to censor the American people.
Well, they're only saying this because this administration is unlike any other. Even the first Trump term is unlike what we're seeing today. As you know, the first day, the first Trump term, he signed one executive order. This go around, more than 20. I mean, he is shaking things up in ways that we wish the Reagan and Bush administrations would have done, because making the change that the American people say they want. 64% of Americans say the government wastes a large majority of its money.
Yeah.
And they're right.
They are. But you know what worries me, though, Caroline? And I'm sure that you guys at the National Review are on to this already. The Democrats have a plan. They are going to oppose Trump. They've figured out how to do it in the most effective way. And I didn't see this coming. I honestly, I was like, how are they going to come at us? What are they going to come at us? I know we talked about using the D word a little bit ago, but they ratcheted it up a little. Well, I'm going to show you the response. We got to be careful of this. This is what's headed our way. Take a look.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against DOGE. We'll fight Elon Musk. No Elon's kept within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk.
Okay, I don't, guys, Caroline, I don't know how DOGE songs? I didn't see DOGE songs coming. I was like, what is this? We're
formidable foe.
This is
It's financed by USAID.
Better shut down the hatches, guys, because the theater kids
White
are
flag!
coming, and they are still coming. The theater kids are still here. Gosh, but that's all they're really good at is theater at the end of the day, and it's not lost on me that melody sounds awfully soulful for a bunch of like geriatric, like white people. Very strange. But listen, like we don't really know what they have up their sleeves, the Democrats, but litigation is certainly to be expected. We know that Elon Musk at DOGE, they're part of the reason why they're acting at warp speed is because they know an onslaught of litigation is coming. It's already started coming. They're trying to slow Trump down in the courts as much as possible. And there's going to be a real legal dispute over the president's impoundment power, I think, which is part of the Constitution, but it's basically the president's authority to not spend funds that are congressionally appropriated according to his political preferences. And
right. So you think it's going to go beyond singing? What I'm hearing you say is there's more. Because that song, to me, stopped me dead in my tracks. I was like, okay, guys, I didn't think you were going there with a song about which side are you on with DOGE. I didn't see it coming. I was like, we gotta retreat. We gotta get our act together. James,
Sean, wait, can I just add in?
Please.
There's also something so poetic about a group of people who are offended that Trump is trying to suggest that they are not essential employees and that they may be part of gumming up this system of waste and, just incompetence. And there's something so beautiful about the way they're going to fight that is by getting together, leaving work behind so that they can put together this rally for hours on a Tuesday or a Wednesday while most of us are at work. It's like, great job, guys. You're kind of proving his point that you can all just leave the building and go sing for a few hours.
Well, fortunately, there's a new phrase in D.C. Regarding DOGE. It's moving at the speed of Trump.
Yeah.
But she's fire from the speed of light.
I got to find this because I think I posted it on Instagram, but this is not a joke. The Democratic National Committee put out a to-do list, like what we did today to somehow impress people. It's so pathetically sad. But I thought to myself, like, can you imagine going to the new chair of the DNC and be like, sir, we also have a bunch of people that sang a song. Can you put that down on the list too?
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.